Today, I'm going to be reviewing Justice Ducks number 5, which is the fifth and final Justice Ducks comic. Because starting in the fall, the entire line is going to be rebooted. The entire Dynamite Darkwing line has been a very mixed bag. The Darkwing run was pretty bad, Negaduck was pretty good, and Justice Ducks has been kind of in the middle. So we'll see if they're able to end off Justice Ducks on a high note. It's written by Roger Landridge, with interior art by Carlo Loro, and the main cover being done by Jay Lee and June Chung. And my copy is the one that also, and I have the Jay Lee and June Chung cover. So we start off with the Justice Ducks at the Audubon Bay Bridge hideout, as Neptunia talks about how they've had a lot of alien encounters recently, and Darkwing is just annoyed that he's not being able to enjoy his Colonel Calamity comic. And we do get a little nice touch as you get to see some of the pages from the comic that Darkwing is reading, and the comic that he's reading is formatted in the way how 90s comics, with the colors being a little bit faded due to being printed on worse quality paper. It's a very nice, fun touch. As they continue to talk about how there have been a lot of encounters with aliens, which they all think that could be leading to something. And eventually, Darkwing has enough and just kicks everybody out. Gizmoduck goes and ends up foiling a robbery. But after he thwarts the robbery, he gets hauled away by a helicopter carrying a giant magnet. So now the rest of the Justice Ducks have to try to figure out what happened to Gizmoduck. And as they're debating, we get a brief appearance by Gosalyn, who points them in the direction of the Mount Crag Observatory. Darkwing continues to be annoyed with everybody because he's just trying to read his comic. He reluctantly goes along. But then shortly after arriving at the observatory, a giant cage captures them. And then they encounter a series of booby traps before they finally get to the observatory and end up finding Gizmoduck strapped to a table. And they finally discover who is behind all this. It turns out that the person responsible is Dr. Fink, who is a green dog-looking creature, who is also happens to be the main villain in the comic that Darkwing had been reading. But before they can really do anything, they end up getting captured by Dr. Fink. But it turns out that he's actually not that bad of a guy, and then we get his backstory, as he was an alien who crashed on Earth, and now that he was stuck on Earth, he ended up building a robot which became Colonel Calamity. And then the comics that Darkwing had been such a fan of were actually dramatizations of his adventures. So it turns out that the reason why he had grabbed Gizmoduck is because he had been trying to send messages back to his home planet, but he hadn't been successful. And he needed Gizmoduck because Gizmoduck had the right technology to get the message through. And it also turns out that the reason why there have been so many aliens showing up on Earth over the series is because it was all because of Dr. Fink had been sending messages into space, and they just ending up on the wrong planet. So now that the Justice Ducks know that Dr. Fink isn't really a bad guy and that he just wants to go home, Neptunia ends up snatching Darkwing's comic and ends up ripping out a page, which leads to a pretty funny expression by Darkwing, as it was a first edition that Neptunia just ruined. But they're able to use the page from the comic as well as also Morgana's magic in order to send the message. And as everybody waits to see what happens, everyone kind of falls asleep. And as Dr. Fink is waiting there, he gives a tearful goodbye to the remains of the Colonel Calamity robot, which he had been fake fighting for years. And then he ends up getting whisked away, and with kind of saved. They all leave the observatory, while Darkwing attempts to take credit for everything, and remarks that he's happy that there won't be any more alien encounters, as we see in the bushes watching them are a whole bunch of aliens. And that's how the comic ends. And now for my thoughts. I am very mixed, because on one hand, in a story in and of itself, it's fine, but as a finale to a run, it comes off as very anticlimactic. It is very lacking in the action sequences, as well as also, there aren't really that many attempts at jokes. There are funny moments, but it's spread out throughout the comic. And it's very, very convenient that Darkwing happens to be reading a comic that just so happens to feature the person that's been all their alien encounters. The comic does attempt to justify it by saying that the comic is a dramatization of real events, even though, since we know that those events had been staged by him, and also the comic tries to make us feel sympathetic for Dr. Fink, but he may have just been an alien who was bored stranded on Earth, but he also was creating fake scenarios where he was putting people in danger. And the way how they try to tie it back to the previous four issues also is pretty thin. All in all, I say that this is a okay comic. It kind of ends the series on a very anticlimactic note. It's not as bad or as stupid as Darkwing number 10, but it's not great either. It also feels like they weren't expecting to be canceled. As a one-off, it's fine, but it's a very disappointing way to end what had mostly been a fairly entertaining, if flawed, series. If you're a completionist, then I'd say maybe pick it up, but if not, this is a completely skippable. And with that, we only have 2 more issues of Negaduck, and then Dynamite's rebooting this whole series. Well, till next time, see ya.